All right, and welcome back to the forecast card. Great day, 7-0. First sweep of the YouTube channel, up a little over 3 units based on how I bet my unit sizes. Can't complain, all pretty solid games. FDU, pretty much sweat-free, dominated both halves, ended up winning by 15. Central Connecticut, a little sweaty at sometimes. They kind of start out slow in both the first and the second halves, but they end up winning that game by 19, so pretty sweat-free. UCF, a little sweaty in the first half. They were down by 5, but I really love this spot. They end up winning this game by 13, so pretty non-sweat near the end of the game. Xavier Moneyline, as non-sweat as it gets. They basically dominated the entire game. Wisconsin, probably the second sweatiest game of the night. They end up winning this game by 7. I don't think the spread moved overnight, so I think everyone would have got this line, which was nice. But yeah, kind of a weird game. They kept going on big runs back and forth, but they end up closing it out. They were technically up by 9, and then, good old dog shit Minnesota decides to shoot a 2-pointer to end the game. Thankfully, not a 3. That would have been a really bad backdoor, but of course not. Notre Dame. Both these teams really sucked. There's only 110 points scored this game. Notre Dame only scored 21 in the first half, which was not what I was expecting. But they pulled through in the end and ended up winning by 2 in the end, which was amazing to see. Almost went to overtime. Luckily, Stanford missed the 2. I was really hoping they'd go for a 3, so we win no matter what, but they ended up missing the final shot. Notre Dame wins by 2. And the total in the Washington game, Washington versus USC, goes to 153. A little bit sweaty, considering the first half had about 83 points. On pace for like 164, but they kind of went dry a little bit in the second half of the second half. So overall, 7-0, solid day. We'd love to see it. Lock comes through again, bringing us to 11-5 on the day, on the locks. And let's move into the 7 games that I like for tomorrow. All right, heading on to game number 1, we have Merrimack versus Marist. Now, this slate is pretty disgusting. You basically only have the Michigan State game. The rest are kind of all terrible games. There are some elite teams playing, like UC San Diego, but they're playing bad teams, so not going to be a lot of good basketball on today, so if you're going to skip a day, especially after a sweep, I wouldn't mind if you were to skip today. I'm not necessarily too happy with this slate, but I did find some sides that I quite liked. So let's get into game number 1, Merrimack versus Marist. Now on paper, like Merrimack is just a way better team, and they're due for a lot less regression. Obviously, Merrimack not necessarily known to be an offensive team. They kind of play a little bit similar to, I guess, a shittier version of St. John's. Not a great offensive team, but elite defense and really good at forcing turnovers. That's kind of what they do in this game. Offensively, they're not great, but they're ranked 5th in the nation and getting potential points off of steals. And Marist is a team that turns the ball over a ton. They're ranked 260th in giving up turnovers. They played a much easier schedule than Merrimack. Marist has played almost the easiest schedule in college basketball. The average win percentage of the teams that they've beaten or played are below 20%. Merrimack, not nearly as bad. The average win percentage being 31%. Still a pretty easy schedule, but not nearly as easy as Marist's has been. Now, on paper, both these teams are going to struggle offensively. These teams are both much, much better defensively than offensively. But I think Merrimack has a slightly better offense and the pretty significantly better defense here. That's going to be the difference. There's really nothing that this Marist team defends well. They're decent at defending the mid-range, but it's not really a shot Merrimack takes a lot. They're going to huck up a lot of threes, but the one thing that they're going to do is they're going to defend you, and they're going to get a lot of points off of steals. That's kind of their thing. Both these teams don't really go to the line a lot. Merrimack will shoot significantly more shots than Marist. It's going to be a pretty slow-paced game. But the one thing that is true is that Merrimack is a pretty solid defensive team. Marist, they like to shoot mid-range and threes. They don't really shoot any near-basket shots. They like to get points off offensive boards. They'll find some success on the offensive glass, that's for sure. Merrimack isn't necessarily a really tall team. But yeah, I do love this spot here for Merrimack on the road. If you look at the power ratings between these two teams, Merrimack is an elite team when they're on the road. They're coming off a solid win over Quinnipiac. Last time they played Marist, they lost by 1 at home, so I think this is going to be a true revenge spot for them heading on the road here. Marist coming off 2 pretty bad losses where they only put up 52 and 54 points. Their offense is not clicking in the last 2 games. Merrimack just put up 73 and 78 and 70. I think this is going to be an awesome spot. Obviously, it is a true travel spot for them, but it's only 150 miles, where they've won 3 of their last 4, traveling around over 100 miles. and Marist, they've only won 2 of the last 4 at home, and those are against Niagara and Canisius. But they've lost to any kind of decent team, and I think Merrimack is going to be that team, especially in this revenge angle. If you look at the regression, Marist due for a ton of regression. They're one of the teams due for the most regression in college basketball. They have a 74% win rate. It should only be closer to 50%. Merrimack also due for some regression, but not nearly as much. But I do love Merrimack in the spot. I think they're going to play really aggressive in this quick turnaround revenge spot. Marist, coming off 2 pathetic games, you could argue that they're going to be wanting to show up for this one, but their offense is not clicking, and having to play a really elite defense like Merrimack after those 2 bad performances is going to be tough. So I think Merrimack goes on the road here and beats Marist outright, but I'm going to take the +1.5 on FanDuel because whenever they give it to me, I'm going to take it because I'm a little bit of a bitch when it comes to these short lines. I like to have 1 point in my back pocket just in case it comes down to it. All right, heading on to the second game, we have Liberty versus Middle Tennessee. Now, this is basically very similar to the reason I liked the last game, except there's no revenge angle. The revenge is kind of on the opposite side, but I just think Liberty is that much better of a team, especially on the road. If you look at these 2 teams, Liberty coming off a tough loss to Kennesaw, Penn on the road. Middle Tennessee has won 3 pretty solid games in a row. 2 at home, then they went on a road trip. They're kind of feeling all and mighty. They're going to have 1 extra day of rest here over Liberty. It's not too significant of a travel spot, 400 miles. They've won 2 of the last 4 after traveling similar miles. Meanwhile, Middle Tennessee has won 2 of the last 4 at home. But their wins really weren't that convincing. 3 points over UTEP, 4 over Sam Houston. The games they lost to were not nearly as close. If you look at the head-to-head, Liberty at home as 7.5-point favorites did beat Middle Tennessee by 10. But when you really look into it, Liberty is a team that plays much, much better on the road. They're borderline top 50 team when they've been playing on the road this year. And Middle Tennessee has been overall around a borderline top 100 team, but when they play at home, they fall outside of the top 150. So for whatever reason, they just haven't been playing well on their own home court, and Liberty loves the energy that comes with playing against opponents in their own barn. Now, Liberty has been the better team on the season, last 5, last 10. Liberty kind of doesn't show up well against the elite top 50 teams, but they kind of shit on everybody else, especially teams like Middle Tennessee. If you look into this a little bit more, Liberty is both teams are about equal offensively, but Liberty's defense is really what sets them apart from Middle Tennessee. Liberty, they're a team that's going to find a lot of success from 3. That's basically the shot they take the most. They'll find some success in the paint too, despite the fact that Middle Tennessee does defend the paint well. Liberty still will find some success. Both teams don't really get to the line very often. But if you look at Middle Tennessee, they're a team that they kind of rely on the offensive glass to get a lot of their points. They shoot in the paint. Both of these things are going to be a problem for them. Liberty's a top 70 team and limiting offensive boards. They don't turn the ball over at all. And more importantly, they're one of the best 3-point defenses in college basketball, ranked 5th. And if Middle Tennessee is going to struggle here on the offensive glass, they shoot a good chunk of threes. Around 40% of their shots come from 3. They're basically going to have to find a lot of success making their shots in the paint, but they're really not that great of an offensive team. Without the offensive glasses, I think they're going to struggle to score here. If you look a little bit deeper into it, Liberty, they are due for some regression. They're 20-6, but they should be 17-9 when you look at shot quality. But Middle Tennessee is even worse than Marist in terms of how much they're due for regression. They're 18-9. Their shot quality record brings them down to 12-15. They've gotten really lucky in their games, and I just think Liberty here on the road is the way better squad, and they're going to be motivated here to keep their stranglehold over this division. Currently, Liberty is just behind Jackson State, but if they win this game, they'll be tied. And as far as I know, this is also an important game because these 2 teams are tied 11-5. So not only could Liberty become number 1 seed if they win this game, but they could also lose their 2nd seed if they lose this game. So this is a really important game, and I think the fact that Liberty is just such a better road team, they're going to show up for this one. They've been an elite. They're 7-2 on the road. Obviously, Middle Tennessee's been 10-3 at home, but we're getting Liberty here off a loss. Middle Tennessee's kind of riding the wave of 3 wins. I think they're going to be playing a little bit too cocky, a little bit too loose after the last wins. I think Liberty is just that much better of a team. So give me Liberty here, +1.5 on FanDuel on the road. All right, heading on to game number 3, we have Northern Kentucky versus Cleveland State. Now, this is going to be the quarterfinals for the Horizon bracket. And despite the fact that Northern Kentucky has been playing really, really well lately, I do still believe that Cleveland State is the better team here. And I think because it's a tournament, they're really going to lock in and kind of, re-find what used to make them such an elite team. Now, if you look at these two teams have played twice this year. They split the series record 1-1, both against the spread and straight up. But both these teams covered when they were at home. And in this matchup, because of Cleveland State's ranking in the quarterfinals, they are going to be at home. And I think that's enough of an edge here. On paper, Cleveland State is the way better team, about 60 ranking points better than Northern Kentucky. Obviously, Northern Kentucky's been playing really well as of lately. Cleveland State's kind of been, I guess, regressing a little bit. But I think because of the tournament, this game just means enough here where Cleveland State shows up. This is kind of an awkward spot for Northern Kentucky travel-wise. They are going to have 3 fewer days rest than Cleveland State. Cleveland State hasn't played since the first, and their last game was at home. Meanwhile, Northern Kentucky is going to have a quick turnaround, playing on the 4th, where they had a pretty solid win over Detroit Mercy. But now they're going to have to play Cleveland State on only 1 day off against a Cleveland State team that's rested for 5 days. With their last game being at home, they've been really comfortable. So this is a really awkward travel and short rest spot for Northern Kentucky against a Cleveland State team that I do believe is going to show up big time in this game. If you look a bit more into the matchups, this Cleveland State team, both these teams are pretty equal offensively, but defensively, I have a pretty significant edge here for Cleveland State. Cleveland State, they're a team that likes to shoot a lot of mid-range. It's one thing that Northern Kentucky really fails to defend. They're ranked 305th in defending the mid-range shot. Cleveland State is a really good team on the offensive glass. They get a ton of opportunities, and they're 90th in college basketball and converting those second chance opportunities. Northern Kentucky is really bad on their own glass, ranked 332. They give up a really high second chance opportunity percentage, and that's going to be a problem for them. They don't defend the 3 well. It's not really something that they take a lot of, but Cleveland State's going to have some looks from 3, which I think will allow them to really pull away in this game. Look at the other side, Northern Kentucky. They're a team that shoots a lot of mid-range. They have a really solid mid-range percentage, but against Cleveland State, they're borderline top 100 mid-range defense. I just don't think Northern Kentucky does enough to run away with this game. They might find some success on the offensive glass. Cleveland State might turn the ball over a little bit, but I think the problem with the offensive boards is going to be a significant difference for Cleveland State, and that's going to be where they pull away in this game, especially at home. We're getting a pretty short number here. Modeled, I have them winning this game by 6. Most of the models I've looked at has a very similar number. I think we're getting this line because of how well Northern Kentucky's been playing. They have a lot of momentum. But again, I think the fact that we're getting Cleveland State at home, coming off a loss against Northern Kentucky last time these two teams played, I think they've had a lot more time to really look at the tape, figure out where they went wrong in their last game that they lost against them. And Northern Kentucky is just going to be a lot more tired, especially in the second half. So give me Cleveland State here, a -4. All right, heading on to game number 4, we have Hawaii versus Cal State Bakersfield. Now on paper, Hawaii is the better team, and they're going to get to the free throw line probably a lot in this game. But I do believe that this is a Cal State Bakersfield team that I think is going to show up big for this game. They're a team that does shoot the 3 really well, something that Hawaii does not defend very well. Both these teams are going to get to the line a good chunk. I think with Cal State Bakersfield being at home here, they're really going to be extra motivated, to fight harder in the paint to get those free throws. On paper, Hawaii is a team due for a decent chunk of negative regression, while Cal State Bakersfield is due for a lot of positive regression. When we look at the matchup here, we're getting CSB, one of the best, ranked 3rd in college basketball in home advantage. They play significantly better at home. Hawaii plays much worse on the road. In this spot, we're getting them in a true road spot, where they're traveling over 2,500 miles to play this game. The last time they've had to travel over 2,000 miles, they're 3-1. The only team that they beat was Cal State Fullerton, where they still gave Fullerton the chance to score 86 points. I think this is going to be a really awkward spot for them. Last time these two teams played, Hawaii kind of smacked them around. Not a significant, but they did beat them by 11. But again, the fact that Cal State plays that much better at home, we're getting them off a loss coming home here. We're getting Hawaii off of a win where they're going to be traveling 2,500 miles. That's a long way. I think CSB takes this in a revenge spot at home where they've been playing better. They put up on average 76 points at home, while Hawaii only averages 69 on the road. CSB only gives up 72 points, but Hawaii only gives up 77 on the road. We're going to get Hawaii here, completely jet-lagged. I'm sure they would have traveled earlier, but that means they're probably sleeping in a hotel. I don't think they're going to be necessarily very comfortable if they had to travel earlier to, I guess, acclimatize a bit sooner. But yeah, we're getting Cal State, Bakersfield playing the best basketball of their season. Hawaii's playing some of their worst basketball of their season, traveling 2,500 miles to a place where they play worse on the road versus Cal State playing much, much better at home. Obviously, Hawaii, if you look at the stats, is the better team and should, in a vacuum, win this game. But I think CSB is going to find success from the free throw line. They're going to shoot the threes. They're going to get some points off steals. And if they can stay at least a little bit disciplined here, I think they take away this Big West matchup here and win at home. All right, and that brings us to our lock of the day, of my favorite game of the day, which is going to be Cal Baptist -7. You can get 6.5 on a few books. But I think they're just straight up the better team playing slightly better basketball on the season. They've kind of been playing a little bit shittier lately. They've only put up 48 points against Seattle. But at home, I think they win this game. Tarleton State and Cal Baptist played, where Tarleton somehow won by 10 points at home. This was just a terrible shooting performance from Cal Baptist in early January. Now we're getting Cal Baptist at home. Tarleton hasn't played since the 27th of February. I think they're going to be ice cold in general. And in this spot, they're traveling over 1,000 miles for this game. The last 4 games they've played where they traveled that far, they got obliterated by 15, 25, 23. Obviously, this against some pretty decent teams. And then 4 against Utah Tech. Cal Baptist has won 3 of their last 4 at home, including wins over Grand Canyon, Abilene Christian. These are some pretty significant wins too. So I think Cal Baptist shows up for this game. If you look at this Tarleton State team, power-wise, Cal Baptist hasn't necessarily been an elite home team, but Tarleton plays way, way worse on the road, like almost 100 rating points worse than they do at home. And I think that's going to be a problem here, especially being on their first game after a massive travel spot. If you look at these two teams on paper, Cal Baptist has been definitely the better team on the year. A way better offense, about 150 rating points better, and slightly better defense. Cal Baptist is a team that, in the paint might struggle against a decent Tarleton paint defense, but they're going to have a lot of success on the offensive glass. They're going to force turnovers, and they're going to get to the line a lot. That is going to be a true state, and they shoot the free throw really well. 81st in college basketball. They shoot around 75%, slightly better than Tarleton. On the other side, Tarleton, they're a team that shoots really poorly, ranked 353rd in offensive efficiency. But the 2 shots that they shoot near basket and mid-range are somewhere where Cal Baptist defends really well. Tarleton does not shoot many threes, and when they do, they don't really fall very often. They may find some success on the offensive glass. They may get to the line a little bit, but I think Cal Baptist is the way better team. We're getting them at home in a revenge spot against a Tarleton team traveling really, really far. And if you look at the regression stats, Tarleton due for a little bit of negative regression, while Cal Baptist is due for a ton of positive regression. I think we're getting the better team at home. Yes, Tarleton has momentum, but I think that's going to die really quickly after having to travel 1,000 miles and not playing for like 8 days. I think that's a true momentum killer. So give me Cal Baptist here, -7. I think they win this game by double digits. All right, and heading on to the other 2 bets of the day, we have first Michigan State -6.5. I think this line's going to move. I think it's a little bit too low. I think the line's this way because people are assuming that Michigan State's not going to try very hard against their game against Iowa, considering they've already locked up the number 1 spot here in Big Ten. But with Alabama's loss, I think the number 1 seed might be up for grabs, and I think Izzo's going to be thinking the same thing. If they can get a massive win here over Iowa, and the other 2 teams they're kind of competing with don't show up in their games, this could be a spot where Michigan State sneaks in and steals that number 1 seed. They've been playing obviously incredibly well. I would not say that Michigan State or the Big Ten is an easy conference at all. They have some of the best teams. Obviously, a lot of them have been kind of playing a bit worse lately. But yeah, with Michigan just losing their game against Maryland outright, I think that really opens up the door here for Michigan State. Now, on paper, Michigan State is straight up just the way better team. Iowa does play better at home, but they're still going to be missing their best player and their biggest player, who kind of deals with all the rebounds. Michigan State is a team that slams the glass. They're going to dominate the offensive boards. I think this is going to be a blowout if Michigan State tries even 80%. I think Iowa is just kind of giving up on the season. You could argue that they have some heart left in them, but at home, I just don't see it. I think Michigan State is going to be motivated enough here. I have them winning this game by 14. I think they win this by double digits and cover. Game number 2, we have New Mexico State versus LA Tech. Both these teams rank in the top 10% and the slowest teams. They both play very slowly. New Mexico State ranked 239th in pace, LA Tech 306th. Super slow teams, and both these teams are definitely way better defensively than they are offensively. New Mexico State, not a good offensive team, ranked outside the top 200. They're a team that kind of relies on taking mid-range three-pointers and getting offensive boards. These are all things that Louisiana Tech defends well, especially the three. I think they're going to have problems getting their offense going. And on the other side, Louisiana Tech, they only like to score in the paint and shoot threes. New Mexico State ranked 8th in three-point defense, ranked top 100, basically top 100 in near basket. And they're a pretty solid team at defending their own boards. So I think both teams here are going to play really slow possessions. And again, both these teams are actually due for a decent amount of negative regression. New Mexico State's -6. Louisiana Tech due for -8. So both these teams have been shooting better than they're actually getting in shot quality. I think 134 is a little bit too high. I think this ends around 128, 127. So give me New Mexico State at Louisiana Tech under 134. And for my leans, Colgate, I think they've been playing absolutely terrible, but I've seen them play early on in the year. I think they are straight up a significantly better team here, and we're getting them at home against Army. I think they should dominate them. Canisius can shoot the three. They can shoot the mid-range. Ryder due for a lot of regression. Canisius due for a lot of regression, both in opposite directions. I think Canisius can keep this game within the number, despite the fact that Ryder is a slightly better team. Wichita State, I think Wichita State has proven to be kind of a potential dark horse in this big tournament if they could make it. Rice, obviously a team that kind of is sneaky good, especially against better teams that are better than them. I can see this game going either way. Only reason I'm not going to bet it. Rice is just kind of one of those teams. You never really know what you're going to get from them. Same with Wichita. And Grambling, this is just a model pick. I have this model as a 9-point win for Grambling. But I just don't really like fading. I don't like betting these dog shit teams if I don't have to. Grambling turns the ball over a little bit too much for my sake against an Alabama A&M team that pretty much only scores from forcing turnovers. So they might be able to keep the game closer than I want, but I do think Grambling State wins this game pretty handily if they play decently and don't turn the ball over a lot. But yeah, those are the 7 games that I bet and my 4 leans. If you have any questions or want any opinions on any games, comment down below and I'll be sure to respond to them. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully let's get back-to-back sweeps.